Stand by for broadcast.
You're listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations.
Hello, I'm Squadron Leader Peter Lisney, and in this episode, we visit Operation BILOXI in Romania. We'll also reheat a few stories, just in case you missed them. But first, see if you can identify this noise. Find out if you're right at the end of this episode. Now, what are the challenges when fulfilling a NATO operation close to Ukraine while Russia's invasion continues? This episode takes us to MK Air Base near Constanta, where Royal Air Force Typhoon aircraft are providing enhanced air policing and enhanced air vigilance. Our correspondent AS1 Kirwan reports from Op BILOXI in Romania.
We have seen an increased presence of the Russian air threat over the Black Sea, but it doesn't really deter from what we're out here to do anyway. I know our main mission is to provide enhanced air policing.
We can be planning on an afternoon sortie one day and it turns into a morning 3 hours later. And the maintenance that we have to do around the flying that we're tasked to do requires a lot of change.
Our mission remains supporting NATO, showing solidarity on the eastern flank, and making sure that we are in the best possible place to defend NATO's territory should it be required.
This is the fourth time the RAF have carried out the NATO mission known as Operation BILOXI, but this time it's been a bit different. That's because personnel have been deployed to MK Air Base during Russia's invasion of Ukraine. For fans of InsideAIR, you'll know I met 140 Expeditionary Air Wing, which is in charge of delivering this mission, during their training for it at the Operational Training Centre back in February. We discussed whether the war could have any impact on the mission. That's episode 35 if you want to listen back. Anyway, I decided to go to Romania to find out how they've been getting on. Firstly, let's hear from the man leading Op BILOXI, Wing Commander Holland.
I first met back in February of 22, and since then we've deployed out here to MCAB in Romania, where we've been undertaking enhanced vigilance activity and enhanced air policing mission on behalf of NATO, and here at the request of the Romanian government.
When we were at Leaming, there was talk about potentially where this mission could go. Can you talk me through what it's actually been like over the last few months and any developments? Yeah,
it's been an extremely busy deployment for the EAW and 3 fighter squadron. We originally came out here looking to bring out 4 aircraft for Typhoon FGR-4s. That rapidly increased to 6 as the mission expanded to include the vigilance activity. That is in direct relation to the activity, the Russian activity to the northeast of here. But our mission remains supporting NATO, showing solidarity on the eastern flank, and making sure that we are in the best possible place to defend NATO's territory should it be required.
What have the 2 extra Typhoon done for this mission?
The 2 actual uplift of aircraft, what they've given us is a bit more capacity, a bit more flexibility to ensure that we have aircraft available at all times to deliver our mission, to show that solidarity, to enable us to be resolute in our deterrence to Russia, and to make sure the message is very clear that we're here, we're prepared, and we're ready for any eventuality.
When did the tempo increase?
The tempo increased almost at the start of our deployment. We hit the ground running, established our debt, achieved full operational capability on time, and then within a couple of weeks, activity increased dramatically, and it's been at a very high tempo since then.
And was that with regards to Snake Island?
The events and activities of Russian action in Ukraine is very disturbing. It is uncalled for. It is not anything that I expected to see in my lifetime. Our flying will match what we perceive to be the threat from Russia just a few miles away from here. We've been flying some days, multiple sorties, and on occasion we've had up to 3 quick reaction alerts in a single day. And it's an extremely high operational tempo. But the team have coped remarkably well with it. We've been thoroughly well supported by our host nation and NATO partners, but also the logistics chain and the support network back in the UK. We've seen the number of scrambles, the QRA, Quick Reaction Alert activity up almost tenfold on previous years. It has been a true example of the professionalism of this team that's been able to handle that uptick in activity and to make sure that we're ready to launch at a moment's notice. In terms of preparing for the increase of activity, it's about training, it's about making sure that everybody knows the part that they play, be that the guard force, be that security, or the operations team, the engineers or the squadron, just making sure that we all understand our role in launching those aircraft and making sure we conduct that activity in the best possible way to make sure we cohere as a team and a unit to get the pilots in the Typhoons airborne as quickly and safely as possible.
You mentioned a lot about the need for solidarity. Why?
NATO being unified and being a cohered team, able to work together, fight together, should it be required, is vital to ensure that we offer the most protection we can to our alliance, to our airspace, to our community.
How do you keep the morale of the personnel up?
Morale is vital, and like you say, keeping the morale up is a key component of my job. We have a great opportunity here working with our NATO partners. There's a number of social functions, there's a number of activities, and we've also been able to get out into the community and conduct some adventurous training alongside our primary role where time and capacity allows.
Why is it important to get into the community?
Getting the message of NATO, our reasons for being here and our support to NATO is vital. It's as vital as flying the missions themselves to make sure people understand why we're here, what NATO stands for, the messaging, the unity that it brings, and the support for the host nation. As we come towards the end of this rotation, I look back, and I will look back forever very fondly about what we've achieved here, about the team that has been working with me, for me, and I've been working alongside. It's a fantastic group of people. They've delivered an exceptional contribution to NATO during this period. They are, without doubt, the best group of people I've worked with, and I'm extremely proud of each and every one of them.
That's Wing Commander Holland talking about Op BILOXI and having plenty of praise for his troops. There's currently 6 Typhoon fighter jets from RAF Coningsby deployed on Op BILOXI. Flight Lieutenant Travers is one of the pilots. I asked him what he's seen from the skies in Romania so far.
The role we have out here are enhanced air policing and enhanced vigilance activities, so essentially patrolling Romanian and NATO airspace. I've been doing a lot of flying, particularly with what's going on not too far from here. It has been keeping us busy, and we've got more aircraft than we initially planned deployed out here as a result of that. So yeah, it's been keeping us busy.
What kind of things have you been seeing from the skies here?
So Snake Island is not at all far from here, so whilst flying in Romanian airspace and doing our job, we've been able to observe the fighting that's been happening on Snake Island between Russian and Ukrainian forces, which has certainly been quite eye-opening and interesting for us to observe, but we've just been focused on fulfilling our role and carrying out our mission, which is to assure our NATO allies, both Romanian and wider, and help assure the security of Europe. It's the first time I've observed fighting like that taking place that close by and actually being able to observe it live. So that's certainly been quite different, and it certainly brings it home that it's happening very close to here and very close to NATO soil. So as I said, it definitely focuses the mind for us. We have been scrambled several times because of Russian aircraft pointing towards NATO airspace, but they typically don't infringe that airspace, but they do get quite close, but not close enough to be intercepted.
And then what do you do at that point?
It depends on the tactical picture. So often the scrambles will be cancelled or we'll get airborne, but then the need to intercept won't exist anymore. So there's lots of training we can do once we are airborne. So we've been carrying out quite a lot of training here, and that's been the other great part about being out here is being able to work with other partner nations. So we've been doing a lot with the Romanian Air Force, Turkish Air Force, the US Army. I was flying with some of their Black Hawks yesterday afternoon, which was really cool, and this afternoon I'm flying with Romanian F-16. So that's a great opportunity to interact with other partner nations as well.
And is that about sharing like different tactics, learning from each other?
It's certainly about learning from each other and developing a kind of mutual understanding of what each partner nation can bring to the table in terms of capabilities and so on. But it's also about learning how to work together and bring, NATO is a large organisation made up of many nations, so trying to bring them all together and operate effectively together is a big part of what we strive to be able to do.
And how effective do you think that's been so far?
I definitely think it is, and it's something that we, at every opportunity, try to do. So even back home, we routinely carry out large exercises with partner nations. So it's something that we have done and continue to do. It's great to do, and I think we do it well.
With how busy you've been and the number of times that you might be scrambled, how do you deal with that amount of work that you're doing? Because it sounds intense.
It is. So when we're on our what we call hot weeks, so when we're on QRA, the pilots are only on a shift for a day at a time, because, as you said, it's quite tiring, because you've got to be in all of your kit pretty much ready to go, and you've got to be on site. So we rotate people through so that we get some downtime as well, some rest time. And clearly the beach is only 20 minutes from here, so particularly this time of year, we can go down there, go and relax. And there are plenty of kind of nice restaurants and stuff around to go and get some nice food and whatever. So there's plenty of opportunity to have some downtime in between those higher workload periods.
Can you just describe what it's actually like flying the Typhoon?
It's awesome. It's such an incredible machine, and it's an exhilarating ride. So it's a real privilege to be in a position to be able to fly it. And it's clearly the purpose of us being here is quite a serious reason and an important mission, but at the same time, the jet itself is a privilege to fly.
It's not just the pilots who've been busy. Flying Officer Smith is an aerospace battle manager. He told me about his role.
So I'm based in Bucharest, so I work directly with the Romanians. So I sit within their command and reporting centre, Crystal it's called, and they're responsible for directing all military traffic, both tactical and civilian as well, across Romania.
You're seeing all of the aircraft
correct
on the screen?
Yeah, I can't go into too much detail because obviously it's a secret environment, but we obviously have radars all over the country, or the Romanians do, and we have access to them and we help them out as best we can. There's only a team of 3 in Bucharest, so we have to fit it around rotors. So the other 2 are back there today working, and I've come up for the day to chat to you.
How did you feel about coming out for Op BILOXI?
Really excited. It's one of the best deployments we can do in my branch. It's at the envy of quite a lot of my peers. So myself and Matt, who's also a controller out here, we're really grateful, and obviously we're very privileged being in Bucharest as well.
I understand that since you've been out here, it's been a lot busier than expected. There's a lot of activity. How have you managed with that?
Yeah, that's true. It's been different to previous incarnations of this deployment. We have seen an increased sort of presence of the Russian air threat over the Black Sea, but it doesn't really deter from what we're out here to do anyway. Our main mission is to provide enhanced air policing, which we're doing week in, week out. I don't see there to be any difference. It just happens to be that Russia are constantly having a presence over the Black Sea whilst we're doing our job.
Before you came out, was that in the back of your head at all about potentially we could end up being involved in something much bigger?
Yeah, potentially. As you said, it is a pre-planned operation, so we didn't really have to think too much on that side of it. But a personal opinion, yeah, it did cross my mind. But as we got in and settled into the sort of battle rhythm of our deployment, it was sort of more noticeable that it was going to be very similar to previous ones, but slightly an increased op tempo, just because of the presence in the Black Sea. Obviously, you've got all the Brits and the Americans working here, and there are some Romanians. The three, including myself, work outside. I work in a Romanian-only sort of environment, so it's constantly coming up with language barriers. So we're trying to get them to teach us a bit of Romanian. I won't try any because it's not that good. But yeah, it's just, I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is just getting across what we want to achieve or how we can help them. We obviously want to provide them with much support as possible. So I'm obviously detached from the EAW, so I work with them on a daily basis, not just on what we do, but I also help them on their internal house missions as well. So I'll sit on with some of the Romanian controllers, and I will not necessarily coach or teach, but we will talk about, stuff that they've done on console, what could be better, why they did this, why they did that. So I'm not just here to help with the EAW, I'm also here to help with the Romanian Air Force controllers as well.
Flying Officer Smith there speaking about his work in Bucharest for Op BILOXI. We've heard from a couple of people working closely with Typhoon aircraft on this operation, but how are they actually kept at readiness for so long? I chatted to lead avionic technician Sergeant Crosby to find out.
I'm ground crew. I'm an aircraft engineer on the Typhoon aircraft. It's one of the most survivable aircraft in a combat environment, one of the fastest, most manoeuvrable and most lethal.
How do you feel about working with this aircraft?
I've really enjoyed working with the Typhoon platform. It's a very complex system for an avionic technician. There's more than 70 computers on board, all of which need to talk to each other, exchange data, and have the right signal at the right time to do the job. So we've come here with more aircraft than we expected to, which has meant more people coming out, and a large uptick in the amount of flying we're doing, because we're not just standing by on the ground, we're also patrolling from the air and showing our presence in the wider NATO aspect.
How do you keep the aircraft to that standard that it needs to be then?
The work is very intense, and for all of the extra people that we've brought out, keeping aircraft at readiness is quite difficult and does require careful planning. But for all the planning we do, we can't predict the faults that may occur or the change in taskings that do come quite rapidly. We can be planning on an afternoon sortie one day and it turns into a morning 3 hours later. And trying to manage the aircraft availability and the maintenance that we have to do around the flying that we're tasked to do requires a lot of change and a lot of adaptability. We're quite well supported in what we do from home, and there's a lot of data exchange goes on and discussions of planning of spares provision.
You talked about the maintenance of the aircraft, but what about the maintenance of yourself and the people that you look after?
As the avionic trade lead, I'm responsible here for about 15 people, and that's not just their technical abilities, their training and coordinating the work they do, but also any welfare issues that they've had. The RAF's generally got a very good support network that should anyone need to leave theatre, go home and a family emergency, we've been able to get them back in relatively short order.
How do you deal with being away from home?
I deal with being away from home very easily. It's work 24/7. I've got a lot to focus on. The main hardship of being away is that my wife is at home alone with my 21-month-old son. So she's working far harder than I am to put me here. I can always almost be guaranteed some time off at the end of the shift, but she only gets when he sleeps. I was married after I joined up, but I'm very lucky her father was in the Navy before, so she had some idea of what to expect, and more than most. And we've both very much got a work-first attitude that whatever the job needs, the job needs. And we just have to hope that when this sort of deployment ends, that we get the time to make up for that.
AS1 Chelsea joined the RAF as a reservist. She told me about her role.
So I get in the morning and I check to see if there's any updates on demands for stock that's due in. And then if the aircraft need anything, we have what's called a primary equipment package, or PEP, which goes out with the aircraft. So within the PEP contains a lot of equipment needed to keep the aircraft flying. So if the aircraft need anything, the techies will come and ask us, do we have this? We'll have a quick stock check and issue anything off to aircraft that they need. If we don't have it, then we'll contact the logistic focal point or LFE back in the UK and get what they need shipped out here. So I've never worked in like the logistics PEP cell role until I got out here. I knew that it'd be like a combination of all different like aspects of supply combined, but I wasn't entirely sure what it'd be like. It's a lot busier than I expected, but that's good. It's good to be busy, especially when you're away. I throw myself into the gym and training. So before I work, I'll go to the gym, and then after work, I'll go to the gym as well. But there's a lot of other stuff to do on camp. You got they put on like movie nights down at our welfare facility, and there's always people out to go for like a drink or to go into town for a little bit of a shop. So there's always stuff to do. Yeah.
So you've got quite a good close team that you work with here that like you kind of keep each other going. Keep busy.
Yeah, we're like one big family.
As I mentioned earlier, I met some of the troops on this operation when they were training for it at the OTC. Wing Commander Malmuth runs the training centre and was in Romania at the same time as me to find out how they were getting on, so we had a catch-up.
It's great to come out and see them in action, and I think, as I mentioned back in February, March time, one of our jobs is to make sure that the training we've delivered is hitting the spot and achieving what we need to achieve. So we've come out here this week with two remits. The first one is to look at the training that we delivered. So we've had structured interviews with the people who came to us for their pre-deployment training, making sure that all of the scenarios that we put them through were realistic enough for them and help them to prepare for the job. So the acid test is always whether or not they can perform their job now they're here on operations. And the good news is that it looks like that is the case. And so most of them have commented really positively. So we had over 80% of the people thought that the training that we put on for them was useful for them here on the deployment. The second part of the job here is to also do an evaluation of them while they're here. So ahead of next year, we need to make sure that the Royal Air Force is ready to deploy forces in NATO, in a NATO guise. And so by coming here to check all of the different areas, so the command and control, the logistics, the force protection, the flying capability side, and also looking at things like intelligence and so on, that's really important to make sure that we are ready to go in any guise next year from a NATO perspective.
Just going back to the interviews, the chats basically that you've had with personnel, what kind of feedback were they giving you?
Generally really positive. So I think everyone likes training, and we have a thing called the happy sheet at the end of your training where people generally tick a load of boxes and say it was really useful, really enjoyed it, but they don't really know at that point whether or not the training was useful. Whereas now, 4 or 5 months later, because they've been operating here for 3 and a bit months, they really do know whether or not that training was useful, and they can give us some really good steers on how we can improve our training in the operational training centre. So one of the things that we're doing today is we're going to be looking at things like, from a medical perspective, what kind of things have happened here, whether that's to do with the heat, because it's very hot out here now, or indeed other areas for force protection, the way that they organise themselves, and we can feed that back in to keep our cells fresh and make sure that our process and our system that we use to train people is evergreen.
Is there anything that you already know that you're definitely going to be implementing then for the future training?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, one thing that's interesting is the team here have organised themselves in their headquarters in quite a different way to other expeditionary air wings that we've seen. And in fact, we were just talking about this a couple of weeks ago. What's the best format? So where do you lay people out? Where does the commander sit? Where do the different area chiefs sit? So it's really interesting to see that, and it helps us to see the best way of doing that in the future. Equally, on the command side, there have been some really big challenges here because of the increase in tempo from the Ukraine crisis and the way that the UK have been responding to that through NATO here. At the time of the pre-deployment training, things were just starting to bubble up. And then, of course, on 24th of February, that's a date that most people will remember. That was when the Russian invasion actually occurred. And so at that point, I suppose the Expeditionary Air Wing suddenly realised that things might change. They did change. And so instead of just doing an enhanced air policing operation to reassure the NATO population here in Romania and to deter any aggression, they've moved into additional operations, so enhanced vigilance activity, so patrolling up and down the border of Romania and of course Ukraine, and just being ready for any escalation that might occur. Clearly not here to escalate, but here prepared and ready should anything else occur.
How do you feel about actually being in Romania with the guys and girls that you've helped train for this mission?
It's really rewarding. It's probably the best part of my job to see the effect of what we've delivered. I'm a training officer by background, so it's a bit geeky, but if I know that the product that we've provided and taught people on is useful, then that gives me great pride, and same for my team. So seeing it in practice, we obviously train contingent EAWs as well, so the Expeditionary Air Wings that sit at readiness, and we've got a number of those at a particular readiness state, so that means that they're ready to go should they be required to, but they haven't been going recently. This EAW have physically come out here, and so I get to see the product of that, and I know that the other ones that are back in the UK would be ready to come out here or go anywhere else in the world for that matter. So it's really rewarding.
That was Wing Commander Malmeth talking about the training and how it's benefited the troops. It's not just the RAF detachment currently at MK Air Base, it also hosts the French, Canadians and even the US Army, which forms a part of NATO's commitment to collective defence of the alliance in Eastern Europe. Colonel Traynor has been talking to me about the US Army's role in the mission.
My role as the Area Support Group Black Sea Commander is to provide logistical support to rotational units throughout Romania, Bulgaria and Greece.
And how do you go about providing that logistical support?
So the logistical support is a coordinated effort between our headquarters and multiple enabling sustainment units and their respective capabilities, i.e. transportation, maintenance support service, food services, life support, things of that particular nature.
And why are all those elements important for the overall mission?
Those things are important for the soldiers that are doing the mission because, number one, soldiers need to have a place to sleep, they need to have a place to eat, and they need to have a place to relax, and they need to have a place to do their particular missions, whatever that may be. So without those elements, the soldiers or the units cannot do their job in support of the effort. A lot of troops have been positioned at this particular location because, again, of the strategic importance of this particular location within Romania. Our job is just simply, as these troops come and wherever their onward movements are or will be, it is our job to support and sustain them, to receive them and take care of them until they get to where they ultimately need to go. We're all military, and that's the reason why we wear the uniform, and we wear the uniform to get that call to go and do what we have been training to do in order to prevent situations or assist in situations such as this. So everyone knows the importance of what they're here to do, and everyone is chipping in and doing their collective parts to make that happen.
Can you talk to me about what we're in front of right now, the Black Hawk?
So we're in front of a Black Hawk, a medical chopper. So this piece of equipment is primarily will be used in the event for mass casualty or medical evacuations. What we do is in order to get these units off the ground, it requires aviation fuel, and so parts capabilities coming in to maintain them. So that is my role as the Air Support Black Sea Commander. The Romanian host nation is primarily responsible for determining resources outside based upon their networks and their sustainment operations. If there is any shortfalls where at times where the Romanian host nation cannot meet that capability, the United States can jump in and offer assistance.
What can you tell me about what it's like working with the RAF?
All the countries that come to participate in that mission are very, very, very unique. But the UK forces, the UK Royal Air Force, they are a very close-knit, tight group. They are very down. They're very purpose. They're very focused on their mission. They're just a joy and an ease to work with.
And of course, I chatted to the host nation.
I'm Colonel Dodu, Deputy Commander of Mihail Kogalniceanu Air Base. It's a challenging mission because we have now a huge presence of the international forces here from NATO, especially from United States, and also the Romanian Air Force, personnel.
Were you expecting the presence to be as large as it is now?
4 months, 5 months ago, no. Yes, it was a sudden increase of the presence of NATO here, but we are very happy because we have more exercises in our area and a stronger cooperation among us. It was a planning that was made in NATO, but the move that Russia made against Ukraine was very suddenly. We didn't expect it, but our reaction was very fast and according to the threat. Yes, and I think we manage everything is happening today in the proximity of the eastern flank of Europe.
How do you feel being so close to what is happening in Ukraine?
Because we are part of NATO, we don't, set a posture that it's more threatening or not that we had before. But again, we are more aware today than we were yesterday.
And as you mentioned, it's the 4th time the RAF have been here in Romania. What was it like when they first arrived?
In 2017, we had the first presence of UK here. For us, it was a big surprise. We didn't expect them to come here from UK because we expected to have someone more close, speaking about the distance between Romania and a NATO country. But little by little, we started to be very close friends.
How did you go about building that relationship?
It was not so hard because if you are in NATO, I think everyone expects to increase the cooperation and to try to meet the standards from NATO. And we started like Air Force to Air Force exercises. After that, UK asked more details about exercises from between Air Force and land forces from Romania, Air Force and maritime forces that we have here in the Black Sea area. And they finished trying to obtain details about how we are training our maintainer, our pilots. They had a lot of visit in our training school in Bucharest. And I think we manage everything. And we expect to have again UK in our country for the enhanced air policing.
As you've heard, there's been a lot of activity at the MK Air Base during the RAF's involvement in this mission. It aimed to show solidarity, provide reassurance to NATO countries, and deter Russian aggression. As Wing Commander Holland told me, the RAF is here and prepared for any eventuality.
This is Reheat for Inside Air. I'm AS1 Victoria Andrews. The Royal International Air Tattoo, or RIAT as it's fondly known, returned to RAF Fairford to the delight of massive crowds. The world's largest military air show was supported by the Royal Air Force in the form of flying displays, aircraft displays, STEM presentations and more. The air show also acts as a platform for important announcements. One of these is the financing of the world's most advanced radar, which will be fitted to UK Eurofighter Typhoon fighter jets. The Mark II European Common Radar System, at a cost of £2.35 billion, will further transform the Typhoon's control of the air, allowing the aircraft to simultaneously detect, identify and track multiple targets in the air and on the ground. Elsewhere, the RAF has maintained its training commitments. RAF Chinooks from 27 Squadron have deployed to Amari Air Base in Estonia to support the UK-led NATO-enhanced forward presence in the Baltic region. Officer Commanding Aviation Task Force 3, Wing Commander Butler, said how the Chinook force relishes the opportunity to work alongside NATO and facilitate the essential training being conducted. Meanwhile, Typhoons from RAF Lossiemouth-based 6th Squadron are conducting close air support training in Poland. Joint Terminal Attack Controllers have also lent their expertise, providing close air support to ground forces on the multinational exercise. And finally, having flown a world record first 100% synthetic fuel flight in November of last year, the next phase of research is now underway in a bid to eliminating the reliance on fossil fuels. The aim is to scale up the technology and to produce more fuel for certification and testing, which will provide the crucial data evidence as to whether the synthetic fuel is a viable alternative to fossil fuels. That's Reheat on InsideAIR.
I'm AS1 Simon Ross with this episode's Name That Noise. That was the sound of a Yamaha R6 from the RAF Motorsports motorcycle road racing team. The RAF Motorsports Association encourages participants in motorsport events at all levels. Service personnel can compete in their chosen motorsport discipline, including circuit racing, rallying, motocross, karting, and many more. The motorcycle road racing team sees racing carried out on circuits like Silverstone, Brands Hatch, and Donington Park. If you see yourself as the next Lewis Hamilton or Valentino Rossi, or maybe you're just itching to get racing, usually you first join a club and undertake some training. Then you'll be issued your racing license. But you don't have to race if you still want to get involved. Behind every pilot is their team, so if you'd rather support from the paddock, you can do that too. Contact the RAF Motorsports Association and maybe one day you'll be celebrating first on the podium.
That's all for this episode of Inside Air. Please give us a review and subscribe on your favourite podcast app, and join us again soon.
You've been listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations. If you're serving in the RAF and have a story for us, please speak to your unit media and communications officer. Inside Air is written and produced for the Royal Air Force by RAF Media Reserves.